Beaverton School District negotiations for the license contract for 2024. And just want to welcome all of you here. I want to go through a couple logistics. For your team and for audience members, there's bathrooms right through that doorway right there. We also have, I'm sure you guys already have this, but connected by Wi-Fi, that if you're a BESD user in the district, it would be automatic, but if you're not, there's a guest one that it just automatically pops on for everybody. We are going to plan a natural break at sometime after we go through both of our articles, but we have meals coming around 5, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be at 5 o'clock, okay? And I wanted to also let Susan share a couple things about our team.
Thank you, Janine. I just want to mention that there are 2 of our team members who aren't physically present with us tonight, and one of them is Dr. Karen Perez, who's our board member. She is watching on live stream, and that's how she's participating. Thanks for the wave. And also Shirley Valladares, who is doing the same.
Thank you. Okay, is there anything that your team would like to add
Just-
before we start?
Sorry, just one thing, since, well, one, my team, just so you know, the mics are live, and they're asking that they stay on the whole time so that there isn't the constant on and off. So if it's off, if you wouldn't mind turning it on. We have one team member who should be coming in any moment. She's just finishing up a meeting, so she's in one of your guys' rooms over there. Thank you for that space. And that was everything. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks for the reminder about
Yeah,
the
yeah.
mics. We also have mics that are up here, so anywhere you're at in the room, it picks up similar to your site, okay? So we are gonna get started with Article 18. I'm gonna turn over to Mike Schofield.
Thank you. I appreciate your time today. I have a presentation today. We're gonna pass out the traditional 18-19 response forms. I think Michelle's got those. That'll address in detail all of the pieces of 18 and 19. What I'm going to talk about today, presentation-wise, is where we are in the counter on 18 and 19 on the big picture COLA and CAP in Article 19. And then I'll lay some context out with that, do some comps, share with you some information we've gathered, and run you through kind of some budget scenarios. So given that, appreciate the time and your attention on this. And I'll grab a clicker here. So our proposal is a 3-year. As I understand it, you proposed a 2-year compensation package on COLA. We would be looking for a 3-year and 3% each of those years. So 3-3-3-year agreement. And health insurance cap would increase at $50 a month in each of those years as well. Make sense? Straightforward. Okay, salary comps. We did some comps. They're useful in the past. I put 2022, 2023 up here so folks could see kind of where we are with this group of folks that I've included here. Normally, this is mostly the usual suspects. We have some in terms of size and others in terms of where they're located near us in terms of geographic location. So you can see at the top, just to orient you, on 22-23, the starting salary at North Clackamas is $50,783. Beaverton's was $50,616, and on down the list you go, and that kind of describes that to you. On to the Beaverton moving forward with the double asterisk, that's that 3% and how that would compare moving forward. And the single asterisk, you can see that I've included for Westland and Tigard. I've simply taken their salary and increased it by 6% because their districts pay the PERS, right? So that's that PERS conversion that we do. So in 22-23 on our beginning, and the other thing I did not do is I did not go in and say, we're a 193 or a 194 and somebody else is a 195 or a 192. I'm certainly willing to have that discussion. Lindsay, you and I have been trying to meet and kind of figure out how we're going to do this. So I have not done that here. I've just said overall, what was on the schedule, what's the beginning salary, what's the max salary? So looking at the max at the bottom of that same column, you can see where we were in terms of 22-23. Hillsborough snuck in just ahead of us there. 23-24, this is how things line up. You can see at the minimum part of the schedule, we start to slide a little bit in terms of where we are today and settlements that have happened. This also includes Portland's recent settlement and where they are. Important to note that when you see settlements and you hear about other settlements around other districts and you hear large percentages, you want to compare that to where we are, right? Like, you can get big settlements in a district and they're trying to catch up to a base where we are or a West Lynn is that we're looking up to now. So that's 23-24 moving forward. As we go into 24-25 with our 3% across, our comparators start to fall off. So all of these folks that fall off the list are in bargaining just like us, so we don't have comps there to compare with. But you can assume, right, like if Westland's at 108, 178, and 23-24, we're probably at our 3%, not keeping up with them as they bargain through this year. Does this make sense? And then we move across and we go out to where we are, and we're the ones that would be, if we had a 3-year, the only one out there to compare at this point of this comparative group. Okay? Health insurance comparators. This one's more difficult, right? Like, we've talked a little bit about that. And again, I would really like to collaborate with you on what measures we would like to use here. You get into situations where you have a district that might have a pooling concept where a district might contribute a certain dollar amount per FTE or portion of an FTE, that those dollars go into a pool. They're not necessarily allocated to the individual until after the pool gets the money, for example. You might have a group that says, we'll pay 92% of whatever the premium is, right? And you might also have others that say, we're just similar to us. We allocate it to the person, whether they take insurance or not. That we don't pay if people don't have insurance. We do pay if they do. Our comparators there, the broad range is $1,370 a month in Hillsborough. They have a pooling method in Hillsborough to over $2,000 in Tigard. I just pulled a couple of them to say that's the comparison. Then on top of that, I would say we also have differences in plans, right? Like how much is out of pocket and what does your Kaiser plan look like compared to our Kaiser plan? Do we have the $5 visit or do you have the $25 copay? All those things are things that I think we need to consider as we want to be competitive with our neighbors on benefits. So again, I would appreciate any help you can give me on what you'd like to compare it to so that we can get those apples to apples worked out. Okay. This is the big meaty document. Those of you that come to the board meeting, Lindsay and Katie, you see this all the time. We run this through the budget process. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take you through a little bit of a deep dive into these numbers, and then we're going to back up and look at the big picture. What you see in front of you here is I'll go over the assumptions first. You have a combination of actuals that have already happened to give you a little bit of historical perspective, what we're currently estimating, and then estimates all the way out through the end of the next biennium. We don't take the forecast out much further because they tend to get more and more inaccurate the further out we go, right? Like more and more speculation in terms of those assumptions. So in these assumptions, it assumes the $10.2 billion state school fund that was approved for this biennium, and that's good. Looking out to 25-27, we've assumed a 9% increase in our state school fund in the next biennium. For perspective, again, it's neither good nor bad. That's not a high number, like, oh my gosh, you're being way too optimistic. It's also not, unfortunately, not a low number, right? It's we've seen less than this in the last in the 21-23 biennium. I think it was a 3% increase. That was the lowest we've seen in years outside of the 2008 kind of range. But generally speaking, 9% is kind of a middle of the road number. Assumes enrollment declines. So we've been declining since 2019. Demographically, that's what our demographics folks tell us, that structurally what's going on, what happened during the pandemic that first year where there were significant enrollment declines across districts, not only in Oregon, but nationwide, there was that drop. And now I think we're through that, right? I think most of that has worked its way out of the system. What we're dealing with mostly now in Beaverton is low birth rates and kind of a built-out community, right? This isn't the 40 years of 3 to 4% growth every year. We can count on it like clockwork. What we're facing now are smaller elementary or smaller kinder classes coming in, large high school students going out. So if you look at our high schools and what the enrollment looks like to them, and you said, wow, what's going on with enrollment? They would tell you nothing. We look great, things are fine, things are rolling along. You look at elementary, that's where we see these smaller class sizes, or smaller classes coming in. So we assume that based on the declines our demographers have given us through 25, 26, and then I flattened it out. I didn't want to keep going with those 10-year declines because things can change, right? Like we can get some improvement. So I flattened it out after that. This includes what we just talked about, the 3% COLA each year in the 50-50-50. It includes the staffing that we added in the fall of 2023. So you remember back in November, we talked about adding staffing in special education, including even hiring some temp service to get some positions filled to meet needs of the kids in our schools and staff. So that's included in these assumptions. The kinder pairs, that was an add this year as well. Those are included in these numbers as well. Also includes enhancements to the staffing allocation methodology. We just met with the group last week? Last week, I think.
Yes, last week.
Where we talked about this. Pretty nice enhancements to the staffing allocation methodology. So those are included in these numbers as well. So this is just to give you a perspective of what's in and what's out, right, at this point. It includes previously funded ESSER positions related to schools and teaching and learning. So think about, it's not all positions because we had some operational positions that were included in ESSER. Those are not included here. What's included here is I think we have some social workers, bilingual resource facilitator folks that were in there. So those are included in these numbers and estimates as well. Does not include any budget changes under review for this year. So right now we're in the process of building a budget, and that process is we've run everything operationally up into the 2 deputy superintendents' offices, and they're looking at budget requests and considering those right now. So those aren't, I don't have those in there. When we get to budget time, we know we've got some things we probably need to do and to look at, and so those will be included as we build the budget. So at some point, what will diverge here is just these estimates here to an actual budget document. We'll propose our budget in May, and at that point, we'll make a lot of assumptions and about what's included and what isn't. So there are some things under consideration that aren't there now. Doesn't include the student investment account, not that they're not there, it's just not included in these numbers. SIA still exists and is funded accordingly. Same with Measure 98, Students High School Success Grant. And importantly, based on the best information we have today, right? Like it changes. As water goes under the bridge, we make changes to our assumptions. Do you have a question?
Do you want me to ask now or do you
Sure,
want me to ask
no,
now?
that's fine.
I was just wondering if there were any substantial changes expected.
Like budget, like expenditure-wise?
Yes.
I don't know if I quantify them as significant, but there are some things there are different things within the strategic plan that I think we need to address that'll be coming, right? Like some things we're gonna need to do. I wouldn't say significant, new program, new, but there will be some areas where we need to target, especially as it relates to the strategic plan. So that's the big picture of this. Let me talk a little bit about how this works. So if you look at the first column, we just take our resources and our expenditures and we chunk them for our school board and for our budget committee so that they don't get into the literally thousands and thousands of pages that we could go into in terms of how we spend money in the district. And so you can see we start with our beginning fund balance. That is the money that we have at the end of each year that becomes a resource in the next year. So you can see this 109 million here, how it translates to 138 million here, and that 138 comes into the next year as a beginning resource for the next year, right? So it's just kind of like our savings account goes into the next year. State controlled, we call it state controlled, and what's included in that is the state school fund, as well as our property taxes that are also a part of the state school fund. So that's two pieces, it's state revenue as well as local property taxes. In the locally controlled section, that's our local option levy that we fund teachers with. It's also ESD money where we get cash in lieu of services from the ESD. And what used to be very insignificant, but is becoming more significant, is interest earnings. Interest rates have gone up. it's becoming a bigger piece of our budget pie, so that's included there as well. So you can see our total of again, that beginning fund balance and our resources for 22-23 was $652 million. And when we get to the expenditures, we chunk it in 3 chunks: salaries, benefits, and everything else. And so you can see, as a district, we are a people business, very people-intensive business. You can see that's where we spend most of our resources. So for salaries in 22-23, 289 million, benefits almost 170, 54 million on all other, and a total of 513 million spent that year. And what that does is it says, if you look at the next line, our surplus deficit, that ignores fund balance and just says, what are our current year's resources matched up with our current year expenditures? And did we run at a surplus or a deficit? And that's key to me as we look out over the years to say, how are we doing, right? Like, is that surplus growing? Is it declining? Is it running negative? And you'll see that in numbers as we go across. So we pay attention to that number. Again, our ending fund balance, the final line here is our financial reserve, which is essentially our PERS reserve. The board put that in place back in 2020, I believe. And it's simply, the financial reserve is something that the district used to have, and we put it back in place in 2020. We used it in 2000, was it 1819? 1819 was when that got used to fund a shortfall. And so it was gone, and the way to restore it, the board chose to use what's essentially a PERS reserve to build that up over time. So what you're seeing here is the balance of that number moving forward. In total transparency, where are the reserves? What are we doing with them? Those are them. So that's how this whole thing functions and operates. And then we just go through the years in terms of what we've estimated in future years and moving across. What's going on with where we are from this ending fund balance and where it's grown over time? We have a significant reserve. And as we look back to what's gone on the last several years, it's primarily 2 things. One, we've had a decline statewide in enrollment, not just in Beaverton, right? So how does that impact? Well, the state school fund is a fixed number. And as there are fewer students in that number, we get more dollars per student. And I think the state and we as districts have been slow to react to that, right? Like as we have our reporting mechanisms, we report to them a couple times a year on what our enrollment's doing, and we finally give them our final enrollment at the end of the year, our average daily membership, and then they correct for that the following May. So what's going on is statewide we have a declining enrollment that hasn't been anything like this in 30 years. And so as that number's gone down, the state school fund has gone up, does that make sense in terms of how that resource has actually grown? When we've set a budget, we've looked at what the state has estimated for Beaverton School District, and we said, okay, that's our number. And then we come back essentially a year later with the enrollment declines, that revenue's actually increased. So that's one thing that's been going on. The other piece of this is obviously during the pandemic, just, lights not on, not as much heat, buses running, those kinds of things. The other thing that's added to this is, even in 22-23 we saw it, is significant staffing shortages, whether it's subs, whether it's existing open positions. And think about the things that happen when that happens. When you have shortages like that, we also have things like, let's say we were planning on some PD. And because we can't get subs, we don't do the PD. So not only do we not spend money on subs normally that we would be spending, we didn't do the PD associated with it. Also on an operational side, we might have things we plan to get done, but when we don't have people in those jobs, some of those things aren't getting done. So some planned expenditures weren't happening during those years. So that's what went on kind of in that 22-23 range and before in terms of when the pandemic started. For 23-24, looking at this year, what's primarily driving it is expenditures are close in terms of what we expect them to be. They're running fairly close to what we budgeted and what we estimated. Again, this state controlled piece has gone up for a couple of reasons. One, we budgeted on $10.1 billion when we built our budget. Legislature appropriated 10.2, so that was better. We didn't immediately say, oh, okay, now that it's higher, let's go spend that on something right away. We've essentially While we've done some things during this year to spend some of those resources, we didn't have a specific allocation for it. So state control dollars are up again this year. And that's kind of where we are with our fund balance. And part of this was thoughtful in terms of where we've been with ESSER, right? Like we've had this ESSER resource, it's been sitting out there, we've been using it for things. So how do we continue to fund those things that are in ESSER? Well, we'll use reserve. And our board and our superintendent knows that as we move forward, and we've included things like these ESSER positions, we've absorbed those into the budget, and we've got the fund balance to be able, and reserves to be able to absorb that as we look across the years. So this runs out, this is the 3 and 3 and kind of where we end and where we would end if this were perfect, and it's not. And that's one of the things I tell the budget committee every year, that when we make an estimate, it's just that. I know this is incorrect, but are we in the ballpark, right? And what are the trends telling us? What do the trends tell us over time? So what this suggests to us is over the next few years, we'll spend this fund balance down. It looks like to me by the end of 26, 27, reserves would be about 84 million, somewhere in the 12 to 13% range. And we will have spent it down by 45%-ish if all this were correct. Again, just a way, this is where you zoom out of the picture and look at the big picture. What's the trend and where are we headed? We're going to spend down reserves over the next several years because we have them and they're available, and we want to do some of those things that we've been doing in ESSER. Make sense? Okay. Next slide, here's the differential. I have taken an attempt and made an attempt at costing out the 10% and 8% as you presented at our last meeting. Again, what I did here, just technically for those of you that have been on bargaining before, no change in the methodology here. I took the scattergram that we had in November. I applied it the same way we did last time. But I do think it's important, Lindsay, that we sit down and say, all right, what's a percent worth? What do these things cost us so that we have good numbers when we make proposals. So looking forward to that, but it shouldn't be it looks a lot like the last go around. So numbers should be pretty consistent. So this says all the other things on the previous one we just went through and took time on are correct. This adds in a differential. So this is the differential between the 3% I just mentioned and the 10% in year one. That's the impact. And the health insurance cap increases versus the one we proposed. So this is just a differential between those numbers. And I've added them in here to say, all right, what's the impact on our budget over the next 3 years, given that? So you see the impact in the first year is 25 million, grows to almost 45 million in year two, about 40 million. I know that you have not proposed to year three, but the impact of those costs rolling into year three are accounted for, if that makes sense. So overall, if this were the way things went, our deficit, we'd be running a deficit of $71 million on an annual basis for that year. That's really high. And overall, we would have run out of reserve. We'd be $26 million in the hole. And we can't do that. So somewhere back here, we'd have to do something different. The board has policy at a 5% reserve in the general fund. And this would be well below that. Does that make sense? Capture that? Okay. On the final slide, this captured everything from the last slide and says, all right, because I know I can't run a deficit fund balance, what would we do about it? What would be our thoughts at the business office as we shared to the school board about, all right, what would we do? So what we would do is for the 25-26 year budget, we'd be looking at about a $29 million reduction in that year. And the way that translates is it tries to get me to this 5% reserve number here. And so that everybody follows this, we're not cutting 29 million twice. We cut it once in the first year, and the effect of that carries over into year two. So I haven't identified what costs would go down and how those would roll up to the next year. I've just said, you make a $29 million reduction in year one, that grows at about 3% in year two, and that's the value of those two things and how that would work out. So in that scenario, we'd be looking at about a $29 million reduction next year that would keep us at our 5%. And we would still, again, remember, one of the things we look at is this annual deficit. for surplus, it'd be a $41 million deficit. So if you go out and you say, all right, what does the 27-29 biennium look like? We'd be pretty reliant on the legislature to give a pretty big increase to erase that $41 million deficit. That's it. Somewhat painless. Questions, comments, thoughts?
We don't have any questions at this time, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Are you gonna go for 18?
Oh, for 18.
Yeah.
So just another piece with Article 18 that I just want to point out. So in Article 18A5, we're proposing as a part of the work year, teachers new to the district may be required to work 5 additional days prior to the school year. We have found that we are needing to equip our teachers new to the district with the training and professional development that can help them be successful in Beaverton. And so we are proposing that we make that change.
Any questions about that? No.
No, thank you.
And then with 19, Mike, you shared the part on there already, right? Is there any questions about Article 19?
There's one more piece of 18.
Oh, there is one more.
Yep, sorry. So Article 18I, professional enhancement, that is an area of the contract that we have not referenced or used for a number of years, and we're proposing to delete that. We don't feel like it is reflective of our current practice with professional development. So we're deleting that. And that's Article 18. Okay, so Article 19, basically the changes that are embedded in it were what were covered in Mr. Schofield's presentation. Just the $50 per month with the insurance cap.
Per month, per year?
Per year, there we go.
Thank you. Suzanne, would you like to cover a couple of your articles?
Yes, thank you. We're going to start with a new article. Emily's going to share that. Sorry, Katie is going to share that. Thanks, Michelle, for being our runner.
I'm here for that. Your name is the Caucus.
Sure. You need.
Okay, so this is a new article that we are proposing, titled X for right now until we have a number for it. And this is related to specifically our bargaining unit members who work at Flex Online School, as we know that their working conditions are vastly different than members who are working in a brick and mortar school. So as you can see in A, it really highlights the why for the article about having the unique mission to serve students through an online instruction. B, we talk about how bargaining unit members assigned to Flex Online will organize and participate in in-person activities for Flex Online twice per month. And we talk about how these in-person events could be anything from field trips, day enrichment activities for students, in-person testing. These are not limited to these, but just possible examples. C, we outlined that if a bargaining unit member at Flex is ill and contagious, but in their judgment can still work, they will be allowed to work remotely without having to use any of their sick time. And D, we also say that if they are scheduled to participate in an in-person event, that they would use their sick time at that point. For E, they will be noted that educators who teach at Flex Online will not ever have to teach both in-person and online simultaneously, but may be allowed to do so at their discretion. For F, we say that elementary bargaining unit members shall be assigned no more than one grade level per school year. And G, bargaining unit members shall be provided with at least 2 copies of all instructional text. We forgot to use the secondary language. And
Go ahead, Katie.
we also have language around secondary. It will only be teaching 1 prep per period.
We will pass an updated copy of that after caucus. We did just miss one line.
Didn't hear that.
We'll email it too.
Emailing will probably be first because we don't have a printer here.
We will email it, Susan, since we don't have a printer here. Did you guys have any questions about that article?
So that on D, if a bargaining unit member is contagious on the day they are scheduled to participate in an in-person event at Flex Online campus, it seems like part of that sentence might be missing.
Yes, it should have included that sick time then would be taken.
I have a question. Do you have examples on what instructional texts would be? Just because I've never taught on FlexLine, so I wonder what that looks like.
We'll discuss as a team and get back to you after caucus on that, just to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay.
Were there any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So our next one is Article 16.
Does everybody have it? It's me. Hello, I'm talking. Sorry. Does everybody have the? Okay, great. Groovy. So in Article 16, the only change is at the very, very end. We've added a couple of provisions under just the general provisions section. So the first one, number 6, states that bargaining unit members shall attain access to district electronic infrastructure during unpaid leaves. The reason we're putting this forward is because we've had, it depends, it varies, folks' experience when they are on leaves, if they, whether or not they have access to district electronic things connected to the district. For example, logging on to Employee Online to check their remaining leave balance, or if we're during tax season, logging on to get a W-2. So things that are necessary, folks suddenly find, oh my gosh, I can't access anything anymore. So we just want to codify the retention of that access so folks can get to what they need to get to while they are on leave. I will give you a sneak peek. Language very similar to this is also in Article 15, paid leave. So this is not exclusive to unpaid leaves. That's right. And then moving on to number 7, here we're codifying, I'll just read the first sentence here. For leaves 4 days or fewer, bargaining unit members shall prepare lesson plans for substitutes if practicable. And then toward the end, for leaves that extend longer than 4 days, members shall not be responsible for preparing lesson plans. And the reason for this is we've been running into a few situations lately where members are on long-term leaves and have been pinged throughout their leave, hey, we need some lesson plans, hey, we need some lesson plans. We understand it is common practice for folks who are going out on a long-term leave to provide a general framework and give a few days worth of lesson plans to set a long-term sub up for success. But after that, folks who are on those long-term leaves should be left to leave and not have the expectation to work during that leave. So we want to put it in here so that our members are aware of that, as well as administrators who don't seem to be, all of them don't seem to be on the same page. So we want to make sure everybody has the same information and we're all on the same page. And that's it for Article 16.
I actually have a question on the 6th part. You mentioned employee online. That feasibly is accessible, like if I was to leave today, I would be able to get on that. So you're just mainly referencing the Google and the email then?
Janine, I would say it includes everything, so it's not, and we've heard different stories about what folks can access and what they can't. I would say it also, it is access to Google and all of those other things, because we have had just, for example, a situation where somebody was started a leave and the sub was like, hey, I don't know where this item is, and the person couldn't access their Google Drive and it was their second day out. And they were like, well, yeah, have fun. And so we're just trying to prevent situations like that from happening. And that's all that stuff that's on the intranet, and folks just, we have heard, again, varying accounts of, oh, I can get to it, and then some people, as soon as they start their leave, like that morning, they're trying to log on and can't get anywhere. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
I have a
Lindsay,
question.
go for it.
I have a question on 7. It says prepare lesson plans for substitutes if practical. That word could mean a variety of things to different people, so could you mind providing a little context of that?
Eric, I'd like to take that question back to our caucus just to make sure that we're all on the same page before I answer that.
Lindsay, my question is also on 7, and I'm wondering if in your conversations, it came up. So after day 4, who would be preparing those lesson plans?
So our understanding, what we're using here is the definition of long-term leave based on BSD's definition of long-term leave. So when somebody is out for long-term leave, they should not be working, and we just want to make clear it is not the member's responsibility to provide those plans.
Okay. Did you strategically not answer what I asked?
I can neither confirm nor deny. We'll chat about it in our caucus and provide extra information as practicable.
Anyone else have questions? You guys have another article, or would you like us to share one?
We have 4
Yeah.
articles that we are prepared to counter that we
Yeah.
can start with. Okay. The first one being Article 4.
Does everyone have a copy? And can you hear me? A little closer. Okay, now can you hear me? Great. I'm a little soft-spoken. So, We have a counter to your Article 4. I'll hit the highlights. In A1B, we have brought Article 4 into alignment with our Article 5 proposal. We accept your proposed change of targets to goals. Okay, you'll see, in 3B, we have extended the timeline for grievances to 30 days. We think that if that is the complaint procedure, which we'll also be calendaring today, if that's that deadline, why not have them be the same deadline? The fewer different competing deadlines we have, the more usable the system will be, right? Going on. I want to point out that B2 in general procedures on page 3 of our proposal should also be 30. We will be emailing that change there after caucus. If you turn to page 4, we thought about your proposal. We acknowledge that it's a real issue that we've all encountered, that the first informal conference isn't really documented. We agree, it's a thing. Rather than invent a new form and a new step, we just said, okay, the first step should be written only. There are a couple reasons to do that. We think that that is, one, it's simpler, no new form needed. Also, we think it'll be more accessible for some of our more nervous members. I think that it's important to make the contract as accessible and less intimidating, as little intimidation, real or imagined, as possible in the use of the grievance procedure. So for some people, it's easier to have a written document. That way, the written communication will be less intensely confrontational. Not that the grievance procedure is inherently confrontational, but it can be for some people. So it's more accessible, clearer documentation, and perhaps we can have a clearer sense from both parties what's needed and what's really being talked about if we reduce it to writing from the outset. Okay, we accept your change on from 5 to 10 days. We have no issue with that. Let's, if you go to page 6, level 3, the school board. Respectfully, we've reinstated the original contract language, and we thought hard about this. We believe that if something got to that point, which very rarely happens, it should be said.
Excuse me,
Oh,
Emily,
yes.
where are you at? I'm lost.
Page 6, top. It's level 3, hearing procedure.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Are we all there? Okay. So, along those lines, we've reinstated that language because if something has gotten to that point, we want both sides to be free to offer their versions of the narrative. And while we acknowledge that later in that paragraph that was not stricken in your original proposal, we know both parties may submit an additional written statement for consideration was left in your proposal. Fair enough. But we think that a summary is distinct from an additional document. One of the things about step 3 is that this is the last chance to get new information and new exhibits in before the arbitration. So we think that we really do need to have those two sources left in this procedure, or this part of the procedure. Okay. Let's see here. I believe we accepted your changes to board decision method. And we have let's see here, shall we? We do have a change that we will also be giving after caucus for C. So look forward to that change in C to bring it into alignment with our Article 5 proposal.
Emily, that was with C.
It is C, arbitration hearing. So it's on page 7. It's actually, the change will be tweaking is on page 8. The arbitrator shall not be empowered to reinstate a terminated teacher in any grievance arising out of a violation of Article 4, A1D. I believe the intent of our proposal is clear. We want to be able to arbitrate the non-renewal of contract employees, but we want to make sure that that language is what we intend. And that is Article 4. Any questions?
I had two.
Yes.
Going back to what I'll call the collapsing of the level one into one step.
Yes.
So that would, the current language, or what would result then, would be that they would prepare or fill out the grievance form and deliver it to the principal or immediate supervisor. Are you guys still envisioning there would be some sort of a meeting or conversation or conference between the supervisor and the employee, or would this just be kind of a handoff of a written document? I mean, how did you conceptualize that as you think about it?
We have some ideas that I'll respond to after caucus.
Okay. I think just for purposes of your group's conversation, I mean, I think our principals do want an opportunity to hear from a staff member and understand the concern and try and troubleshoot at that lower level. So
Yes.
that would be something that we would probably be hoping to retain.
And certainly, we appreciate that. I think nothing would prevent the troubleshooting in a written document, but your point's well taken that a further conversation is important to you.
Yeah, great. Then my second, on the board level, so it's on page 6, where we had proposed to strike that language, and you had, is it more that the association wants the ability to access or to present a summary in writing? You know, right now it's a mutual, it's both parties. If the admin were to say, we think the record speaks for itself, we don't have anything additional to add in the way of a summary, is that a concern for your group? Is it more of, hey, we want the ability to submit a summary, or maybe help me understand a little more what the interest is on that?
I'll be happy to do that after caucus.
Okay, great, thank you. I think that's all I had, so.
Anyone else?
So we do have 3 more counters to make. However, I would like to suggest that we take a caucus.
Sure. How long are you thinking?
Maybe 15 minutes, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Roxanne?
Yes?
You're gonna give us other copies, so I'm assuming you're gonna shred.
So yes, thank you for indulging us with that caucus. We noticed that there was some fine tuning that we might have missed. First go around, so we have emailed your team those first 3 articles that we went over, the new ones as well as Article 4, the counter. If you guys would like to reprint those, feel free, but, is that right?
No, we just sent X and 4.
We just sent Flex and 4. Because 16 was okay. So, yes.
Thank you.
So for clarification, are you gonna review what we asked questions on, or no?
Not yet.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna finish, it's okay. We're gonna finish proposing or presenting the articles that we have ready for you guys for the counters, and then we'll break for caucus, and then we will discuss those questions and come back after that with
Okay.
answers to those.
We might even share one article though after you do that, if that's okay? Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, thanks.
We're here to get busy, so. Not in a weird way, that was weird, sorry. Who told me to put a mic in front of my face? Yeah, we're Article 6. Cool. Look at you, yes.
Yes. Thank you so much.
So welcome.
Do you have an extra one?
Thank you.
All right, Article 6. Okay, so as you can see in front of you, we're cool with accepting the change of the title of the article to complaints procedure. For Section A, we decided to go ahead and eliminate.
Excuse me, Lindsay, can I
Oh,
interrupt
sure
you for a
thing.
second? I just got notified that it's not live streaming right now.
Oh, is that what? Oh.
We did too.
I'm just gonna pause for a second. So
I have
nice.
to rewind and start over.
I was gonna say, I wish I had it, I was gonna deliver some great jokes. I don't actually have great jokes. They're all terrible.
At our last bargain, I brought that joke book. I should go dust it off.
No mics.
We're checking.
Thank you.
You were searching for one.
I feel like those that were present last time would agree. The jokes were wonderful, Erica. The jokes were wonderful. And well timed.
Here's one just to pass the time. A fungi and lichen met and took a liking to each other, but ever since then, their relationship has been on the rocks.
You are a well-adjusted.
I was in the throughout kindergarten level, and now we got some science.
That was my level. I liked it.
Janina's on.
Okay, thank you. You can go ahead and start.
Huzzah. We're on Article 6.
So I haven't verified that we're live yet.
Not actually.
We got notification that they are. You can see it. We got notification.
From a
You
viewer.
are now? Okay. Okay. We're all good.
Take 2.
What an exciting time.
Your joke actually might have gone out live.
This is
I hope so.
All right, so Article 6, here we go. So as you can see at the top, we accept the change of the title to complaints procedure. Section A, we decided to eliminate completely, mostly for the reason that almost everything in there is duplicated in the 2 paragraphs below. So we just want to streamline things and get to the more concrete, like what are the steps in the procedure. In the new A, so the first uncrossed out paragraph there, we added that only complaints related to the execution of a member's assigned duties, just to limit the scope of complaints to our job function. And then the strike, we just moved around the phrase "or staff members" just to kind of clean up the sentence structure and help it flow a little bit easier. And then lastly down there, you'll see that we accepted your deletion. Article 6.
Can I ask you a question about that one? Do you have thoughts or examples like what type of things you're trying to limit with that language add?
You will probably not be surprised to hear me say, Brian, that we'll talk about that in caucus and get to you with some specific examples.
Okay, thank you.
I too have a question. So what would occur with a student complaint?
I'm sorry, Matt, I was writing and have difficulty multitasking. Could you repeat that question,
Sure.
please?
In the new paragraph A, it says from parents, citizens, or staff members. How do you see responding to a student complaint?
This is actually current contract language. We just moved some things around. So we're not proposing any change there.
And some of those complaints may have their own independent complaint process or structure under district policy also, so they may flow through that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else, district, other questions? Thanks.
Our next article is 13.
Lindsay, we have confirmation your joke was heard by Dr. Pettis.
It's my 15 minutes of fame. That's great. That's great.
Does everyone have a copy? Okay, let's go. So we have a different section A in our counter. We have layoff notice. We give the conditions under which members may be laid off. We also, in 2, talk about the importance of receiving notice within 60 days. I think that in a district as well managed as BSD, a 60-day window of notification for the necessity of layoff is the bare minimum that Beaverton School District can do to honor the commitment of its certified bargaining unit members. In B, we have, you'll see our strikes. If you go to top of E, we have rejected your striking of registered nurses. We have also, in 3, also made some changes. I want to say that, so, let's see here. Reductions within each license group described in A3 shall be made on the following basis. We've laid this out. In 4, we have made somewhat of a different, we've taken a different path. We have stricken competence, bilingual / cultural expertise and merit and substituted it with competence or cultural or linguistic expertise as defined by ORS 342.934. And our rationale is that at a time as stressful and complicated and as uncertain as an imminent layoff, something like merit, despite the party's best efforts to develop a working definition, is too subjective, too squishy, too emotionally charged, whereas we do have a working statutory definition that applies to the entire state for cultural linguistic expertise. Moreover, cultural linguistic expertise is a required consideration in layoff per statute where merit is not necessarily. If we go down, some of our edits following through that are consistent with that. Like 5, we have just substituted stricken merit, substituted competence. And I believe that's all of our substantial changes for layoff.
Two questions, if you don't mind. If you go back to A2 on page 1,
Yes.
when we're talking about 60 days from the effective date of layoff, in your minds, is that like the day that I would have started work? Let's say it's a layoff at the end of a school year, which is typically when that would happen. We've had them before, not in this district, but it's pretty rare to have a mid-year. So would that be 60 days before what would have been the first reporting day in the fall? Is that the effective date of layoff in your mind?
We'll get back to you after
Okay.
Caucus.
Yeah, that would be helpful to know that. Second question. Could you, it's on the top of page 3, it's where you didn't pick up our clarification of registered nurses. Can you help me with a little more information on that? Do we have a disagreement about what things are called or who's in the unit or not? Just curious on that one.
I completely understand your curiosity. It probably won't surprise you to hear that I will tell you after Caucus.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That's all the questions I have. Good.
I'm just curious.
I think I understand. Other folks, district questions? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, yep. Then our final article is 15.
Yep.
All right, ready? Okay, so Article 15, we do have a lot of changes in 15. Starting at the top, under the definition section, we did accept your language at the very top there for the definition of sick leave. We threw in there as well, that's the section that I was talking about in Article 16 as far as responsibility for lesson planning. We wanted to make sure it was reflected in both paid leaves and unpaid leaves. And then at the end there was a strikeout that y'all proposed, and we are good with that strikeout. Moving on to section B. This just stipulates that folks who are utilizing paid sick leave shall receive all the benefits tied to a paid leave, including insurance benefits as well as PERS. This is related to an MOU from this year, and we just want to get it codified in the contract. Number 2, I'll go for a while and then pause for questions since this is a long article. Number 2, this just states that the district will comply with the various state leaves, so the Oregon Family Leave Act, the Federal Family Medical Leave Act, and Paid Leave Oregon, as well as letting members know that they will be informed of their rights through those leaves no later than October 1st. So just wanting members to know what they have access to. And number 3, this just says that bargaining unit members who are eligible to take paid leave under Paid Leave Oregon, it just gives them the options that they are able to do. And we wanted to put this in here to make sure that our members were aware of those options. There's a lot of confusion around leaves. It's a black box, and we're trying to make it as clear as possible for as many people as possible. This is also here is, for your reading later, maybe before bed. This is from Paid Leave Oregon and just outlines these options. This is where we got these options from, so we just wanted to make sure that this is in front of you. This is related to, is from Paid Leave Oregon in conjunction with BOLI. There have been some rulings on this. There have been some, as Paid Leave Oregon is rolling out, we're just kind of working through all the things. So here's a fun document to reference that relates to our language there. In number 4, this is just, again, tied to the access to district electronic infrastructure that we talked about in Article 16. I'm gonna do number 5 and then I'll pause for questions. Sorry, I'm trying to read my notes. In number 5, we had a few, and I'm sorry those are not bolded, just changing employees to bargaining unit members throughout. We wanted to change the word miscarriage to loss of pregnancy. Letter B is a strikeout that y'all proposed that we are accepting. And then finally in the new letter B, we are accepting the strikeout at the end, but we are rejecting your proposed language of a manner consistent with federal and Oregon law there. So I'll pause there for questions before going on to the rest of it, if there are any.
Just
Go ahead.
that last one, I'm curious about the strikeout of in a manner consistent with federal and Oregon law.
Wait, no. Sorry, Susan, I was conferring with my chair. Guess what? I'm gonna add it to our list of questions to get back. We're gonna have a lot to report on after caucus, but thank you for these questions. That's helpful, and we'll get back to you on that. Any other questions?
On page 1, under number 3A, where it talks about use available accrued or other negotiated paid leave supplement PLO, is that up to wage replacement level, or is that beyond, or either?
Oh, I'm on the rock. I was trying to figure out where he was.
Thanks, Brian. We'll add that to our list of questions.
Hey, Brian, I'm sorry. Could you restate your question just so I can make sure to write it down and I get it accurate for what we discussed?
Yeah, just curious on the use of paid leave while you're on PLO. PLO is gonna be somewhere around like 60% or 65%. So would that be using leaves to make yourself whole, or would that be using leaves, beyond that point? Just curious what the proposal or what the intent is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the first part? Yeah, Lori.
Wondering, given that all employers are mandated to follow the laws around leave, why it would need to be codified in the contract and then also eliminated on this side. It feels a little incongruent to me.
Such a great question, Lori, and I think when we answer the question about that, I think there will be some clarity there.
Okay.
Alrighty, I'm gonna move on. For number 3, 4, 5, and 6, those are all just the replacement of, almost, don't leave page 3. All just the replacement of employees with bargaining unit member. For extended sick leave, which is number 4, just at the top of page 3 there, we are striking language about the use of that extended sick leave upon the expiration of accumulated sick leave, and are adding at the expiration of all accrued and other leaves there. And then on to number 7, which is the sick leave bank. Y'all had proposed the elimination of the sick leave bank, and we unilaterally reject that strikeout. We heard from folks that the proposal to remove the sick leave bank felt cruel as a removal of access to leave for members who desperately need it. So we're hard no on that elimination. On the top of page 5, letter J, we're adding a provision in there that members can use sick leave bank donations while also utilizing paid leave Oregon. That is our right, and Brian, I anticipate the same question goes for that as our earlier.
Yeah, it seems
statement.
like it.
Moving on to section C. So section C used to be titled Extension of Personal Time Off for Bereavement and Critical Illness. We'd like to replace this with just bereavement leave. So we're eliminating essentially the entire section there and replacing it with the language you find on the middle of page 6, describing how bereavement leave can be accessed by members. Our members should be able to grieve. This has been a struggle, and we're trying to ensure that our members have access to that leave. In letter D, I think this is the final substantive change. This was a proposal brought by y'all about switching United States Reserve to Armed Forces, which we are okay with. So we accept that change, and everything else is just bargaining unit members replacing the term employees.
Questions on our team?
Will you send us this one electronically as well?
You bet your boots we can, Susan, yeah.
I think I might have some more questions after we have a chance to kind of process this.
For sure.
So I don't want you to have to watch me read and think, so.
No worries.
All right.
That's it for us. I do have one question. Is there any way, Mike, that we could get your presentation emailed to us, please? Thank you. And that is everything for my team
Okay.
as of right now.
Do you want to move forward with 5?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean,
Okay.
we're ready with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Michelle, do you have 5?
Yeah.
What is this? Article 5?
Looks like everybody has that one, yeah? Okay, cool. I'll walk through that. So Article 5 on just cause, we did pick up your proposed changes just in the usage of employee versus bargaining unit member in this one, so I think that occurs, missed one, I think. As you know, fundamentally, I think the core of the proposal was an elimination of or an inclusion of dismissals into the just cause arbitration process. So just background, because we have audience, right now, for just, anything short of dismissal, people would have just cause rights, right? And then if it went to the dismissal route, that would be governed by the fair dismissal law, which we have a reference there. I think our feeling on that one is it's a pretty robust law that provides some pretty significant protections for contract teachers. And we don't have a lot of cases that go to fair dismissal. I think if you look over the years, it's probably averages 1 a year throughout the whole state, maybe 2 a year. But that statutory framework is a pretty strong existing structure for people who are dismissed, who are contract teachers. That's our preference, to have something as important as a teacher dismissal go through that. One element of that it has as an advantage, it has the ability to appeal those decisions to the Court of Appeals and even the Oregon Supreme Court. Whereas in arbitration, we never know who we're gonna get. It's somebody that we pick off of a list, and sometimes we get some good opinions at arbitrators, sometimes we get some that are not so well reasoned. With the fair dismissal, you've got 3 people appointed by the governor, you've got an assistant attorney general helping them, you have the ability to appeal through the court system. So there's structure built in place to make that a more rigorous review, I think, and so for us, when we get into the potential for dismissal, it deserves that level of rigor. That's why we haven't picked up your change. I think the other reason, as you had drafted it, I think there was, and I didn't ask this question last time, some confusion as to whether probationary employees would gain just cause rights for dismissal by virtue of the proposal, because in section A, it's a very blanket statement, no bargaining unit member would be disciplined, dismissed, reprimanded, et cetera, without just cause. Then down in C, it talks about bargaining unit members who have been employed by the district for a period of not less than 3 years shall not be dismissed or non-renewed without just cause. So it wasn't clear. We definitely would have probably even a stronger reaction if the intent was to have full just cause rights for dismissal for probationary teachers. That would effectively eliminate the probationary period that the law has in place. There really wouldn't be a probationary period. So that would be pretty concerning for us. We see that as an extended kind of interview process, if you will, as people are beginning their careers with us. So I didn't know, probably should have asked that when you guys presented it last time, but that'd be clarification for us. But again, our preference is the fair dismissal process for those situations. And so we've left it essentially current contract language, other than making those changes that switch out the use of language. And I realized that I missed a couple in that particular place. Happy to answer questions on that.
We have none, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, I think we're prepared to go to Caucus, right, and to have the meals. So we'll be turning off our live stream, but your meals will be available in the Pine. You can pick them up, Ponderosa Pine, around the corner.
Thank you.
And how long do we want to take?
Let's start with 45 minutes, and then I'll let you know if we want to modify that.
Okay.
My guess is we'll probably want to modify that, but I don't want to tell you exactly how long, because,
All right.
you never know, Janine.
Just not that, but we'd be on the way.
Veronica's announcement.
She's not a sheriff.
Okay, Suzanne. She's turning it on. It's on now.
That was really quick.
Oh, no, yeah, it's okay. Just get it out.
Just so you guys know, we are live.
I just wanted to give a clarifier, right? We're gonna end at 8, correct?
Yes.
And then, you were gonna come back from your caucus and give us some answers to the questions, and then you have another article.
Yes, and then we also have some answers to your date proposals too. So before the end of the night, we can go over this as well.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Yep. So we spent a lot of time trying to go through and make sure that we got to all of your guys' questions. We're going to do our best to respond to those in order of how they were asked within the articles. If something gets a little bit wonky, forgive us, but we're gonna go in order of the articles as we presented them.
Great,
Okay?
thank you.
Yep. So starting with Flex.
Hi, so the question was about the instructional materials that we were discussing. These instructional materials would be all the materials that would be available to an instructor if they are located in a brick and mortar. The instructor facing materials, so the teacher's guide, as well as the instructional materials specific to Flex in their online curriculum as well. Because while they are delivering the curriculum that Flex has adopted, they are also providing intervention and all of the different services that a classroom teacher or an academic coach or whoever would be providing as well. And we said 2 copies because in the case that an educator is teaching both in their home and at Flex Online at the Capitol Center currently, we don't think that it is equitable or fair or for them to be hauling materials back and forth on the daily basis. We also think that if a substitute, they had one that day, were to come, they would report to the Capitol Center and they should have access to the instructor materials. And it shouldn't be the duty of the person who is sick to have to drive them to a sub or to whomever.
Thank you. We think that that was your only question for Flex, so then the next one would be Article 16. Okay, it's on.
So, I'll be answering some of the questions for 16. The first one up is if practical. I believe, Erica, that was your question. So if practical means, what we're thinking is if you're able to. So for example, or if it's not too terribly inconvenient. So let's say a parent suddenly dies. You go into labor. You're stuck on the other side of the country coming back from a leave. The power goes out. Something like that. Like the intention is that under normal circumstances, you would do those plans, but stuff happens and we want to allow for that. And I believe I'm going to turn over to Linda.
There was also a question around the online services and access to like employee online services. We've had a situation recently where a member reached out to the association in distress because they're currently on a leave. They didn't have access to get their pay stub and they were in the process of buying a house and they weren't able to turn over any financials. They went in to get their email to email payroll. Couldn't have access to their email, so then they got into their personal email to email payroll, and a nice person in payroll was like, how do I know this is you? Because we are now asking for financial information from our personal email address. Essentially, all of this can be avoided if our members still have access to all of the digital platforms where we can verify who they are, we can get them those income verifications, all of that. This is just one example of the many that we can provide you at any point in time.
Thank you.
I got the next question in Article 16, which was, I believe, from Susan around who is doing lesson planning. This is for number 7 down yonder. Who is doing lesson plannings after 5 days? So as y'all know, BSD categorizes long-term leave as 5 days or longer. In our subcontract, a long-term sub does not become a long-term sub until they reach 10 days. So there is a little bit of a foggy area in there. Our intention with this language is just to confirm that the responsibility for those plans in that window is not on the member taking leave.
I believe those were the only questions you guys had for Article 16. Okay, so we're gonna respond to your questions for Article 4.
So, to answer your question, Brian, about whether we would want a meeting or not for that collapsed first step. We believe that whatever the parties agree to, it should be the form that triggers the meeting. The form should precede the meeting. We are open to a counter that maybe has a meeting to discuss the document, but we're open to it.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have had some conversation about it, so I think that's probably one we'll be able to bring next time and kind of work that piece into it. So thanks, that's
Great,
helpful clarification.
I'm happy to meet you in the middle on that one.
Yeah, great, thank you.
So, going forward, let's see here. To the question about what was most motivating our concerns in Article 4 on page, on page 6 of the proposal, Level 3 School Board. To your point, what is motivating this reassertion of the language? We do want to be able to offer our account of events. You may choose to or choose not to, that doesn't particularly matter to us, but we feel very strongly that we do want to actually offer our own summary events.
Yeah, got it. And as I read it more carefully, it already says
Yeah.
that the district and the association may each submit. So I guess either party could decide not to, even under the current language. So it kind of answered my own question a little bit, or I hadn't read it closely enough, but that's helpful. Thank you.
Happy to clarify our intent.
So, Article 6.
We think that those were the only questions for Article 4. Okay, so then Article 6 is gonna be added.
Yeah, so you asked about some examples that we're trying to protect with the language that says related to the execution of the members' assigned duties. So some examples are a teacher or an educator is having a beer at a bar and a parent sees them and is offended and they file a complaint. Maybe it's rival week and the teacher is a Beavers fan and the parent is a Ducks fan and so they're filing a complaint. Or maybe a teacher has a preferred pronoun that they want to use and the parent's not a fan of that and so they're filing a complaint. Or we have a teacher who is in the process of transitioning as a transgender educator and a parent, again, not a fan of that, or a community member has a problem with that, and so they're filing a complaint. So we're trying to protect our members against those things that don't relate to their job.
Thank you.
And then I think the next question came from Article 13.
So I believe the question was, when are you laid off, really? What's a layoff even? So we believe that the layoff, the 60 days notice is from the board action. So when the board would sort of vote to approve the layoff, that is what 60 days prior to that. Our goal is to maximize the amount of notice that members may receive so that they can readjust their lives after what will no doubt be a traumatic bit of news.
And then Article 15.
So Brian, you had asked about under PLO, if we are looking for somebody to just get up to 100% or if it's gonna go above that. My question for y'all is, are you able to determine how much a member is being paid under Paid Leave Oregon?
No, but the way that the rules are written now, there was a really recent change to that. To the law would give the member the right to use up to leave to get up to 100% leave replacement, but then the district would have to agree to let somebody go beyond that. So I'm just wanting to be clear what what you guys are proposing, so I know that will help us respond, I think.
I think she asked.
My question is, are you able to know how much somebody is receiving
Oh.
from the standard
Yeah.
to know how much of a difference they are making? Like how so that you know how much sick leave you would need to allocate in order to bring it
Sorry, I
back to
didn't
100%.
understand your question. Yeah,
There's a timing piece. there's a timing piece with knowing what that calculation is. So we don't know it, immediately upon the initiation of the leave.
When do you know?
Processing time.
I think it varies, Michelle.
Yeah, it depends on what their communication with the standard. If the standard needs medical certification or something like that, they will do a pending leave approval and then they can deny it. But we won't know those details until really after they have been paid their first paycheck. And it's supposed to be very quickly, but we have seen that it's come up a few weeks and sometimes up to 6 weeks after. You've hit on it. We're really concerned about how to do that.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. We'll respond even further at a later date.
Okay, sounds good.
So to the best of our knowledge, that was all of your guys' questions. Oh, I apologize, just kidding.
Hi, it's me again. So in we're still in 15, on the back of page 2, where we struck out under pregnancy and childbirth, the new section B, and we struck out in a manner consistent with federal Oregon law, including FEMLA, OFLA, and paid leave Oregon, which was y'all's proposal. And y'all asked why we struck that. And the answer there is that the standard of the law of paid leave Oregon, FEMLA, OFLA is lower in terms of providing leave for parents because 2 people can be expected to split one set of leave. We believe that as educators, we're in the business of what is in the best interest of children. And so we want to establish a standard of care that is higher than that outlined in the law.
Now that's the end of your guys' questions. Did we miss any that we need to come back to at a later time?
Yeah, there was one about why you didn't accept the addition of registered in front of nurse. But I think that's the only one I can think of.
Okay, so I can take this one. So, is there a reason particularly that you're interested in clarifying that? Or what is the significance of registered to you guys?
Sorry, I cut off the end of your question.
Once more with emphasis. Okay. We're good? Okay. Okay, so, I'm gonna ask this. So what is the significance of the clarification of registered nurses for you? What is this? Why is this an important clarification for you?
So this goes with some earlier changes that I think we've already proposed in the bargaining unit membership, in the recognition clause. We have both registered nurses that have a 4-year degree, require an RN, and we have classified nurses that are in the classified unit. And so the adjective registered is just a way of clarifying which nurses we're referring to, the ones that are in this bargaining unit.
Shelley would be.
Okay, thank you.
We just got notified that we're not live streaming right this second, so.
Just to clarify, which stream are you looking at, ours or theirs?
It would be y'all's.
Ours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want another joke?
Order it.
It's y'all's turn for a joke.
Yeah. What terms can you offer to us?
No, is that not other duties as assigned? That's so weird.
What I was wondering is whether Michelle's answer was heard on live stream. But nobody
that's a good
protested, so I thought these mics are really sensitive.
Oh, yeah.
But
We
now
also
that's
have
on
the-
live stream.
It is live streaming, it's on whoever is the receiver, it's on there. So we are currently live streaming.
Before we hear your guys' next proposal, I do have a comment to make about Article 18. I just want to point out that with your proposed COLA, insurance of a $50 increase every month for the life of the contract, plus the increased costs of insurance, that this actually boils down to approximately a 0.4% COLA for anyone on the BA 18 step, approximately a 0.6 COLA for anyone MA 18. Also want to point out that that also calculates to, for members on step 2, BA, it's a loss, a net loss of approximately 1.5%, and MA, a net loss of approximately 1.2%.
When you're factoring in the insurance piece, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Anticipated insurance.
Yeah. And that's everything.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to turn it over to Matt Castile for Article 9. We need to pass that out, please.
Got it, everyone has one? Okay, the first paragraph there, you can see that we're proposing that the conduct plans actually involve several things, to include staff guidance around, added that in there, and then student behavior supports for teachers and other staffs, members. It doesn't just apply to teachers, but others as well. Later on in that paragraph, we accept your recommendation around scratching school and adding student, and your recommendation to add the shall rather than will have opportunity. And later on in that paragraph, your recommendation around that, adding that final sentence about reviewing, we accept that as well. It moved down to the second paragraph, imminent threat, accept the bargaining unit references there. Add the sentence there to seek assistance to escort students out of classroom rather than just to send them. We feel that's a safety issue, sometimes just sending a student unescorted out of a student. And then rather than just disruptive behavior, we're proposing adding extremely disruptive behavior, simply because not all disruptive behavior would lead to removing a student from class. So some sort of qualifier there to make it better understood. Paragraph 3, we're proposing adding a designee, administrator or designee. There are other people in schools, SSSs, counselors, things like that, that may deal with students, so it wouldn't necessarily always be the administrator. We accept the language around re-entry conversation rather than the reference to restorative conferences. Again, the rest of that, I think I've spoken to that designee and bargaining unit member. The second page, the one new one there, right at the top, written or verbal. We think that allows for much greater responsiveness from the administrator and dialogue, rather than just limiting to written communication back and forth. And then the paragraph C, the behavioral information, references there around students on 504s or IEPs. We propose adding in, basically, the real change there is adding the case manager in as well, just getting them looped into student behaviors, especially around students receiving special ed services, not just the administrator, but case managers as well. And then the last one, other than bargaining unit one, is we agree with your recommendation to scratch F, the equitable policies piece. And that is it for Article 9.
We have a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Hi.
Hi.
So I have a question about the changes to imminent threat.
Yes.
Help me make the different, I'm very interested in what you think would qualify as something that would be extreme, what's the difference between disruptive and extremely disruptive? Can you give examples?
Yeah, we talked about that. I don't know, probably a fair point to get real clear there. It could be disruptive if a student taps their pencil on a table. That's probably not a reason why any teacher would ever remove that student. But we can all imagine disruptive behavior at a much greater level that we would. So how we clarify that, very, very good point. But just the use of disruptive behavior, which I believe was a recommendation from you, didn't. So that's probably a good point for us to talk about, but something greater than simply disruptive.
I think it also matched up with the current language that's in use in the line 3 of that section that talked about rises to the level of extremely disruptive behavior requiring immediate action. So it was also mirroring that language as well.
We appreciate that, thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to Article 12, Erica Marson.
Suzanne, can I make a quick clarification question for my notes? I failed to grab what time we started caucus. Did you guys grab that time?
Aurora.
We start at 4:49.
4:49?
Oh wait, not 4:49. Sorry, that was the first one. 5:38.
5:38, thank you.
Is there an extra appendix floating around?
Oh, that's 12.
Sorted it?
You should have two separate.
Two maybe?
The appendix was sorted.
Okay, I think everybody has it. So if you'll see, you have two copies here of articles that we're proposing. The first one is Article 12. You propose that, that the current Appendix J be moved over into Article 12, into the actual contract. We are going to propose that we keep Article 12 in abeyance and through June 2027, and I will talk about that in the Appendix J, moving on to the next one, okay? So we're gonna keep that little piece up there at the top for that one, but we are proposing that we keep Appendix J and the Article 12 in the MOU agreement. We've had a year of our job expo and all of the conditions that are listed into this agreement, and we feel that we need additional time to still refine the process and including it in the contract when we haven't had it tested in all kind of situations, such as financial situations and a lot of different variables that we are continuing to refine throughout the job expo. We would rather keep it in MOU agreement. So that's why we have this one here. So in the first paragraph, you'll see where we struck out things that talk about a pilot basis, because we piloted and we're continuing to refine it. With the dates 2024, 25, those are all from the first time that we implemented this. So we just struck out all of those dates that pertain to the first implementation. If you go into the next section with definitions, I think you proposed that we move FTE. We accepted that and we moved it right after work site. So that is an exception there that we're accepting. The next one in the process of preparation, you'll see there where we propose to remove hard to fill and replace it with priority. We've changed in our district our the definition of vernacular of hard to fill. We're no longer using that term, we're using priority. because we are staging our hiring in that particular order, so we want that to reflect the terminology that we're currently using within our district. The next one is C, Job Expo. We just clarified and said certified bargaining unit members because that's who the Job Expo applies to, so we wanted to clarify that. The first one down there that you see, we proposed that we remove no later than May 1st and start with before the official start of the general external postings. And the reason why we have that there is we're such a large district, and staffing and making sure that everyone has assignments is a long, arduous, tedious process, which we're proud to do and pleased to do. But what we want to do is we think that the best way, especially with the refinement of the Job Expo, is the best way to facilitate that is for educators to know their assignments before they elect to participate in the Job Expo. So in order for us to do that, we need to kind of adjust our time. So the no later than May 1st was just a date that was hard for us to pinpoint because staffing is so challenging when we go through that. So we wanted to make sure that we share assignments with educators before we hold the Job Expo, and that's why that's reflected there. So if you go on the next page in 2, we propose that we add their clarification because we did engage in that. We did calendar days, the 5 calendar days, so we changed that, and also that's the same thing in number 2. And if you'll see at least 5 calendar days prior to the beginning of the Job Expo, all members will be notified of their assignments. The next one in 3, we said that we changed it to during the Expo, bargaining unit members who are being involuntary transfer will be given priority because they would have known their assignment and all of those things. So we changed that to meet that. The next one, D, involuntary transfer here. I believe this was your language to be added there, initiated by Human Resources, and we accept that language there with personal concerns. The next page on 3, going down to 6, we affectionately call this the bounce back clause here. And originally it says August 15th. We are proposing that we change that date to August 1st for a variety of reasons. It's in line with our August 1st do not post process there, but it also has implications. And this is when a member, if they're transferred, involuntary transferred, if that position opens up, they have the right to bounce back to that position. And we had it all the way up until August 15th. Well, pay and things of that nature happen around the 1st of August, so we need everyone to be in their assignment so that we make sure that they're set up for pay. So that date kind of coincided with that process there. Let's see, on 7, we accept your language there about the provisions of this section not applying to bargaining units transferred and so on and so forth. We accept. I think that's it on that page. And if we go to 4.
The rest is pretty much
Yes, just the bargaining. So,
nothing
yep, and then
substantive.
trading work sites, a date change there. And that's
I
it.
am not wanting to interrupt any questions, but I'm also really cognizant of the time and the need to talk about next session, so I'm not sure how the chairs want to handle that.
We can hold our questions for this one till next time.
Can you hold it? Okay, thanks. Want to go on to 7 then? Complete that room?
No, we need to talk about our next session.
Oh, no, what articles we're going to bring forward? Yes,
We'll
okay.
have to retain 7 for next time.
Okay, we will hold 7.
And we'll maybe present 7 after you have a chance to ask questions and finalize what you just heard, so that we're not rushing through 12 next time.
Next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know what your team's prepared to bring forward for next session, next week?
Not at this time, no,
Not at this time.
but I will let you know when we do.
Okay,
We do have some responses to the date changes.
Yes, thank you.
Oh. You ready? You got your
Yeah,
calendar out,
I'm ready.
Susan? Okay. So, spoiler alert, calendaring is hard. We're suggesting April 16th instead of the April 18th date for a variety of reasons that the 22nd would be very challenging, but so we can start there. And then for the June 13th date, we can do the June 10th is one that you guys proposed. But we would need to do that one from 12 to 4 because there are some school events such as graduation that we would try to avoid our team missing participating in those.
Because it was 4 to 8, but you would
Correct.
propose 12 to.
Correct.
12 to 4. I think we had a conflict with that 12 to 4 time.
No,
We
We'll
didn't.
talk about it.
Yeah.
and
Totally
thank you.
fine.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
What date was that? The 10th, June 10th?
Yeah, sorry, that one's June.
Got it, thanks.
Okay. I can also communicate with you with regards to the articles we're gonna bring back. Does that
Perfect.
sound good?
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
And then our next meeting is actually next Thursday.
Correct.
Right? Yeah, we got a fast turnaround on this one. So, and that is at our site. So I think that's everything.
We're good to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
12 to 4.
12 to 4,
12 to
yes.
4. Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Have a
you.
good rest of your night.
You too.